In this lesson, we'll add our final details to our model, and then that'll complete all of our actual modeling for this project. So the two details we'll be adding is going to be a centered parting line, and that'll make the main housing look as though it's split in two parts for our renderings, like it would in real production. And then we're going to add a parting line on the back of the walkie-talkie that'll represent the rough location of a battery door. But instead of using cutting planes for this, we're going to use a different method. We're going to use the wire cut method. So let me go ahead and I'm going to go to my right view for most of this work. And the wire cut, just use curves. You don't need to build surfaces to do all your cutting. So I'm going to press F7 just to switch off this grid. And my first one is just going to be a polyline, and I'm going to draw it here and here. I just want a line that cuts all the way through my model and is straight up and down. So I'll take that line and I'm going to use my move tool. I'm going to click on the end point and I'm going to move it in this direction and just tap the tab key. And then I want it to be in the middle. I do have my midpoint snap on. I know I can just snap that right there. And I've held that in a straight line and we've moved it to the center of the part. I go into my right view. I'm going to switch to my ghosted mode, so Control-Alt-G for ghosted. And I'm going to draw some control point curves. So I want my battery door to come in and have a little bit of an arc to it at the top here. Probably the same thing down at the bottom. So something like that. And then I'll draw it here. And again, I want a little bit of an arc to the battery door as well in this view. So nothing too crazy. Fairly simple there. So I have just 3 curves, and these are going to end up representing our cut line for our battery door. So I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to put a fillet on these curves. And I'm going to right click this curve, and that's going to be a fillet curve repeat. So instead of having to hit this curve after I apply a fillet, it'll just stay in the fillet command until I hit either escape or the enter key to exit the command. And this is really handy if you have multiple fillets to apply. So I right click on that. Currently my radius is set to 2. Let's go with a 4, see if we can get a nice big radius to fit through here. So I'll just click this line, and that works. And then that line, and that line. And that works for me. And I think that looks pretty good. Go back to my shaded mode. And actually we're going to jump back to the perspective viewport. So I'm going to probably work kind of in the back of the model here. All right, so we just have 2 curves drawn. And we're going to go ahead. Looks like I did not have join switched on when I filleted those curves. So I'm just going to drag a box and select everything and then click on join. And now they're all joined together. So we just have our 2 curves, and we're going to use those to make wire cuts in this surface. So the wire cut command can be found under the Boolean or the solid commands. And this is the wire cut icon right here. So I'll just click on that. It's asking for a cutting curve. And I want to choose that main curve, the straight up and down curve. And for the objects to cut, I'm going to choose this part. And because you can cut multiple objects, I need to tell it that I'm finished selecting, so I can just hit enter. Now notice it doesn't seem to be doing anything. And that's because the main way for it to cut is actually normal to the curve. So I just need to change the direction here. So I'll just click on direction. And I want it to extrude first in this X direction. So I'll just click on X. And notice now I can drag out in either direction, but because we built this down the center line, that's really not going to help me. So I can just click on both sides, and now I move the cursor out. I click again to apply it, and now it asks me for a direction I want to cut. And I'm going to press keep all equals yes. If this says no, what it'll do is as I cut over here, it'll actually throw away this whole back piece. So when I click keep all equals yes and come out here, it takes a moment or two, and you'll notice now I have a front and a back surface. So let's apply that command again, and we use that for the battery this time. I'll actually pre-select this curve, and I hit the space bar to reapply the command. Objects to cut is going to be this back side of the surface. I'll hit enter. And now I just need to make sure, for my purposes, that I drag this outside. If I wanted just a cut that went through a portion of this, I could actually just have a little cut here. But I do want a full battery door where the cut goes into the side of the model somewhat. And then I'll just drag forward here. All right, now one thing I hadn't really thought about, and that's a sort of a mistake on my part here, but I want to leave this in, is we're actually cutting through this parting line right now. And that's really not something I wanted to do. So I'm going to undo this. And in my right view, let me switch back to my gumball. I'll bring this out just a little bit. And then we'll reapply the command. So go to Boolean, wire cut, objects to cut is this one. And this time I'm actually going to just sort of bring that out. If I go into my top view, I can see where these start. So I'm just going to stay a little bit inside those. So I've clicked there, and now I'm going to click in this direction. And there we go. We've cut a battery door. If I delete that, you can see we have a full battery door in there. Undo my delete, or stop my delete there. So we have a front section, a back section, and we also have our battery door. I'm just going to select my curves here, and I'm going to use my select curve command. Some of my curves are within the actual body itself. And I'll go and move these to my curves layer. Again, that hides them for me. So we have our three main bodies, and if I go into render mode, Control-Alt-R, you'll notice that we can't see any parting lines or anything like that. And the whole reason for putting these in, you notice if I bring it around, you can see a little bit of one right there, little highlight. Remember, the reason for putting these in was to make this look more realistic in renderings. But I'm intentionally not doing this in Rhino, because in KeyShot, we're going to go ahead and use their edge softening command just to take a look at it. So that is the last body details I wanted to add to this. And that actually wraps up all of our modeling details on our body.